Funding for the Hinckley Report is made possible in part by the George S. and Dolores Story Eccles Foundation and the Cleone Peterson Eccles Endowment Fund.
Tonight on the Hinckley Report, the battle is waging for the heart of the Republican Party. Who are the latest casualties? Will this impact pressing legislation? And what effect will it have on Utah? New polling reveals Utahns' opinions on critical issues and candidates. Who are the early frontrunners in upcoming elections? How do voters feel about the ongoing debate over public lands? And what other topics should policymakers be considering for the legislative session? Good evening, and welcome to the Hinckley Report. I'm Jason Perry, director of the Hinckley Institute of Politics. Covering the week, we have Heidi Hatch, anchor with KUTV News, Lad Egan, political reporter with KSL, and Spencer Stokes, president of Stokes Strategies. So glad to have you all with us today. We're going to start talking about politics right away. Okay. 2018 is coming, and we have a new entrant for the 4th Congressional District. Ben McAdams has announced that he wants to run for this against Mia Love, and the first poll is out showing them fairly close. 48% for Mia Love, 42% for Ben McAdams. Let's start with you, Spencer.
I think it's exciting. I love closely contested races, so it will be an interesting race this year, and I think who knows what the outcome will be. It's still too early to predict, but if there's a Democrat that can go up against Mia Love, it's Ben McAdams.
Mm-hmm. Well, what is this too close? I mean, are you surprised about that? I mean, he's been a mayor, a very popular mayor in Salt Lake County, but this is pretty close for this far out. Go ahead.
He's been probably making more headlines than she has. She's been flying under the radar, and I think unless she changes that in the next year, which she probably will, all of a sudden we saw a town hall, tele-town hall this last week, he might get the leg up because he's in the Rio Grande talks. He's a fairly forward mayor right now, and as much as she should have the spotlight, she hasn't been taking it. So it could be his race.
And both Mia Love and McAdams, they're both feeling that this poll is good for them. Yeah. Especially with McAdams in Salt Lake County, where the bulk of the voters are, that's where they're deadlocked. And so he's more well known in that county, and that's where all the voters are. So he's got to make up in Utah County, but I think that bodes well for him that in Salt Lake County that it's so competitive.
And I think the thing that was the most positive for Mia over the last few years, which has been, you know, she was really an all-star in the Republican Party nationally. First female African-American elected to the United States Congress in the history of the Congress. And there was this real worry that they were going to trot her out for everything. So the thing that was her big strength, which was staying and flying under the radar and doing her job, is really turning out to be, at this point, somewhat of a negative. It's probably now time to emerge and do more things publicly.
Well, give us the strategy there. You've managed and helped lots of people become elected. What does she have to do to keep that lead and not give an up-and-comer who has a platform with homelessness like what Heidi is talking about a chance to really take it over?
Well, she's got to continue to solidify her base. You can't give up your base in this race. But the problem is that this district is, of all of the districts, the most purple in the state. And so it does have the ability for someone to come in and make headway. But like I said, Ben McAdams really fits the bill for that. And for the Democratic Party, they should be happy that someone like Ben has been willing to step up. Now, do the numbers bear out? She's got a lead in the numbers just from what we know. So.
And in terms of Spencer saying it's a purple district, I think that does benefit McAdams, especially because Mia Love is more well known across the entire 4th Congressional District. He's an unknown quantity in parts of it, and so where you're more well known, you already have positive and negative against you. So he can really craft his image in the short period of the campaign.
Heidi, give it to us. The Ben McAdams campaign.
Well, I think the Ben McAdams cafe is not a cafe, it's a campaign, will largely depend on what Mia Love does, because she's kind of beholden to her votes right now, and depending on what she does in Congress is kind of going to lay that out for her. He has a smaller stage where he can deal with what's going on in Utah and maybe not get embroiled in all the Trump politics and whatnot. So he can maybe stay a little cleaner for the next year, but it's hard to say. This really could be anyone's race, but Utah County is going to be the clincher on this one.
Yeah, definitely. So what do you make of the big names that came out this week running the finance and raising the funds for Mia Love? People like John Huntsman Sr. and Mitt Romney. How is that going to change this?
I don't know, but to get both of the feuding families together and backing her, they obviously want her to win and they don't want a Democrat representing Utah, but that's going to help her. That's a lot of money, and money matters sometimes in these campaigns.
And it shows what McAdams is up against. A lot of big names there.
I think a lot of folks signed up prior to Ben being in the race. However, this is a page out of the Mike Lee playbook from 2 years ago, from a year ago, when early on they went out and put together a campaign team and a finance committee and a kitchen cabinet, if you will, that included all the big names in Utah, which really kind of tamped down a lot of the rumors you were hearing. So that was a smart move on the Mia Love front, and I think that's somewhat credited to Ivan Dubois, who is a political person and does understand what it takes to win a race in Utah. He's been at the Republican Party, and having him there as chief of staff is going to obviously help her.
Okay, let's talk about Mitt for just a moment more. Apart from the money side, rumors circulating about him potentially running in Senator Hatch's seat.
Oh, he's going to run.
You calling it?
I'm calling it. I mean, why has he wasted his time when he could be with grandkids, taking tours and dropping out on people on the Senate floor? I think he still wants in. When he made that Trump speech on the Hinckley stage, he wanted in then. He still wants in. I don't think he's done yet.
And what he'll come in with as a freshman senator is he's already a statesman. He's already viewed with all that clout. So he'll have these opportunities of leadership right out of the gate that other freshman senators wouldn't have.
Look, the United States Senate invented hazing. Okay, so he's coming in as a junior senator, and he is going to be Mitt Romney, a former candidate for president. But Hillary Clinton was the former first lady, and she was number 99. This is a body that requires you to know your place and know where you fit. And they're not going to change the seniority system for Mitt Romney. And although Mitt Romney would be a great candidate, he's got to really contemplate, does he want his schedule dictated by Mitch McConnell? Because Mitch McConnell determines when you're going to be in Washington. This is something that people don't fully think through when they decide they're going to run for Senate. They think that it's all of the press and limelight, but guess what? Mitch McConnell determines, the majority leader determines when you're going to be in Washington and when you're not going to be in Washington. You can't decide that on your own. And I think another consideration is going to be Ann Romney. How Ann Romney's health is, where she wants her husband to be. I think that of all the politicians I've ever met, I think Mitt Romney really cares what his wife thinks about his politics. And I think that's going to be really weigh heavily on the final decision.
One other thing he's considering, Ladd, you saw the poll. Even though he hasn't announced, he's got a 30-point lead in the polls. And he even got this interesting sort of an endorsement or an encouragement from the Salt Lake Tribune. Kind of as a member of the press, what do you think about that happening so early?
And a glowing endorsement. Yeah, hasn't even said he's running, but already an endorsement there. And it's his race to win, obviously, with that lead there. And really, though, in terms of a counter to Trump, I think that's what Republicans would look to him as. Heidi mentioned the speech here at the University of Utah during the presidential campaign. So really, he comes in as someone who can take on Trump as a counterbalance, if that's what Republicans are looking for.
But it's not a fun place to be, the counterbalance to Donald Trump. I mean, we've seen that this week. Donald Trump is willing to take on individually, personally, anybody. Yeah. And that will be the case with Mitt Romney. I was a little, if you're talking about the poll, I was actually a little surprised that the poll number wasn't higher. 44%, I believe, was the number of Utahns that said they wanted him to run. I would have thought it would have been 65% of Utahns wanted him to run. The fact that it was under 50% kind of shocked me.
I think a lot of people, when they're talking online, social media-wise, have say he's had his chance, he's done, and get rid of him. But I think when it comes down to it, if he's on the ballot, they'll vote for him.
Well, is there room, though, if you're sitting at somewhere like 44, is there room for someone to catch the right, to kind of get all the rest of those? Because it's not like Mitt Romney is a Donald Trump guy, right? So there might be some room there.
I wouldn't want to run against Mitt Romney. Let's just say that right now. And so I think that's going to be a big consideration. And our political system has changed with Count My Vote. So somebody can go get signatures and be on the ballot. It's not like they're going to be able to go to the right and knock Mitt Romney out at the convention. That's just not going to happen. But let's also not forget his star power with those delegates. I mean, Mitt Romney calling you up and inviting you over to his home for a delegate meeting, there will be starstruck people sitting there.
Oh, yeah.
You take that meeting.
Wearing their Olympic coats for more than 10 years.
We still love those Olympic coats. Okay, one more race to talk about here, a little bit farther out, but 2020, the race for governor. The most recent poll from this last week, the Hinckley Institute put out, puts Jason Chaffetz, 24%, as the leader going into that potential race. Is he going to run? Is he even saying this? Or is he reconsidering now?
Oh, he's the name brand jeans. He wants into, don't you think? I think so. And I think he's hoping that distance makes the heart grow fonder, because he probably left on a sour note, but after he goes and hangs out at Fox News for a couple of years, he'll have a somewhat clean slate, because we forget.
And I think that is the strategy, being so involved in the DC machine, where our politics at home aren't like that, not as partisan. Having these few years to be a little distant from DC gets him ready for a gubernatorial race.
Does Spencer, can the DC burn off of him before 2020?
Absolutely, and you have to understand, he was a hero amongst the right with his challenging of Hillary Clinton and investigations into Benghazi. So the right, his base, really do like him. It will really depend on what Jason Chaffetz wants to do. If he was really true, and I take him at his word that he wanted to get out of that life and make some money and spend more time at home, I take him at his word. Now, whether or not he misses it, that's another story. But I take him at his word that that's what he wanted to do. He has always wanted to be governor. I mean, he's been the chief of staff to the governor, and you know from experience, when you've been the chief of staff to a governor, it's really intoxicating. So maybe he wants to be maybe he wants to be back there. So
It's a Utah high.
Yeah, that's right. He's got to be the chief of staff. All right. Well, last comment on this, Lad.
It does depend, though, how high profile he remains, because the Fox News gig, it's not his own show, it's appearances, and so that's a Fox News audience. So it depends on how he gets stays well known to the rest of Utah.
And they test all of this every time a person's on Fox News. You should know they're testing these. They're testing how well they're liked. So who knows? It's a long ways out. It's 2020. He could have his own show by 2020. Lots of things can happen in politics. I would have never thought that Jeff Flake was not going to run for the United States Senate, so lots of things can happen.
That is absolutely right. Can we talk about an issue that is really concerning here in the state of Utah that was addressed this week in Washington, D.C.? President Trump called the opioid epidemic a public health emergency. And Utah is not immune from this problem. In fact, we have a significant problem, some 6 people every week in the state of Utah dying from overdoses. What kind of impact will a statement from the President of the United States have on this issue?
I think people were hoping that maybe the president wanted to go farther on this, but I believe what it does is focuses that it is a real issue, and hopefully it makes pharmaceuticals and so many other doctors' offices think about this, because I've done stories talking to women, to men who have been addicted to these, and they say it starts at the doctor's office with that prescription, and we've got to start thinking about, are there other options? Can you go home with ibuprofen 800 instead of Loratab after you go to the dentist's office or for back pain? Because that's where it's starting, and somehow in Utah we think that if a doctor prescribes it, it's okay, and it's a big problem here.
And I think Heidi's right that it's about the focus. It's largely symbolic, because there's not money, there's not more funding, and our health department here in Utah has said that. It's not that big of a game changer in terms of funding for new programs, but it maybe will make doctors take notice, maybe those suffering from addiction to come forward. And also, I think it sets the stage for lawsuits on the federal level and here in Utah to go after pharmaceuticals, other people that have pushed these drugs as something that's maybe non-addictive, and also go after doctors that have maybe overprescribed.
And it was one of the key points of the Trump administration. When he gave his speech at the convention, this was something he included in his speech. So the fact that he's focusing on it, people underestimate what that bully pulpit can do for a topic. And I think that Donald Trump, probably more than any other president, has used and exercised that bully pulpit more than anyone else. So to shine the bright light on this problem, I think, is helpful. doesn't really give you any more much more funding, but it does shine a bright light on it, and it will be helpful in the long term.
Well, what can be done in the state for this issue? Let's say he uses bully pulpit, and we're talking about it, and clearly we are talking about it, and it is an issue. What can be done in the state of Utah to address it? You went through the lawsuits a little bit potentially about what might happen.
I think just talking about it, what Lad said a little bit, I think just making sure that you feel like you can talk about the fact that you have a problem and go get help, because a lot of these families are families you wouldn't traditionally think of as having problems, but this is not a problem that has one socioeconomic background or anywhere. I mean, this is every neighborhood, every family probably knows someone or has it touching them. So I think the more we can talk about it, recognize it's a problem, and get help is probably the first step we need
and
here.
We saw what Greg Hughes, as the Speaker of the House, could do focusing on this issue. And it really did not get focused on until Greg Hughes said, I'm moving my office down to Gateway. And when Greg Hughes moved his office down there and started looking out the window at what was happening every day, it really changed the agenda and the focus. And now we see this team approach with the mayor of Salt Lake City, the mayor of Salt Lake County, the lieutenant governor, the Speaker of the House, that have they've brought all the resources of the state and focused it on that area. And some people like it. I think the polling data shows that lots of Republicans like it, not as many Democrats like it, but it really has put a focus on it.
And speaking of Greg Hughes, he wants these lawsuits to not be a bunch of states suing. He wants an individual lawsuit because he says that's a bigger payout for Utah that would then go back into treatment programs and awareness, and that could be focused on more rural parts of the states. We talk about Carbon County that has such an issue where in those rural areas there are fewer resources. So Utah could benefit from payouts from lawsuits.
Yeah. Right now if you want help, you can't get it. There's months of waiting, and months of waiting when you're addicted is not going to help you.
Okay, very good. Let's talk about something we touched on. It's kind of hit a lot of these things from Washington, D.C. And Spencer, you started talking about it like with Senator Jeff Flake.
Yeah, I think that what you see there is we kind of have three parties now in the United States. We have the angry, we have the anarchist, and we have the apathetic. And we have these three parties, and unfortunately, the angry has welled up in the Jeff Flake race, and they're unhappy with him in Arizona. And I think that's part of what the concern for him was. His polling numbers weren't great, but I really wish he would have stuck around and fought and tried. Probably the more troubling thing to me is that a politician becomes a target. You've seen Corker, you've seen McCain, you've seen Flake, and now what's happening is they don't want to take on the bully pulpit, and that's disheartening. I would like to see people that stay in the race and push back. Jeff Flake's been a great senator. I think that there are many people in the House that think he changed when he went to the Senate. But as I mentioned, the Senate is the greatest hazing body in America.
You have mentioned that.
You have to go over and try to fit in and conform. This is why I like what Mike Lee has done. Mike Lee has kept that post over here on the right and has not caved into the pressure and the hazing, which has kept the center in the center rather than moving it to the left.
Interesting.
So,
Heidi, what do you think about him leaving at this point? I mean, if he's upset with the Trump administration, what's happening there?
I'm not a huge fan of this. I personally think he needs to put his big boy panties on and stay there, because a lot of his speeches and what he said is, he said, what will I tell my grandchildren someday? And so I think he's saying, you know, this is the right thing to do, but we all know the quote about when good men do nothing. So if he feels like he's the good man who needs to be pushing back, stay there and push back and do what you believe in. I don't know how going home changes that or makes your grandchildren give you a high five down the road and say you left when the going got tough. So I say stay.
Maybe he sets up a PAC, or he sets up an organization that continues to challenge it, and then he will have done something.
Yeah.
But that is what Representative Mia Love said when we reached out to all of our congressional delegation. What do you think about Senator Flake's comments? Mia Love said, I wish he would stay, fight the good fight. But it was interesting to get the reaction from everyone else in terms of they don't want to fight with President Trump. And Jeff Flake said, I predict that more Republicans are going to come forward, but we haven't seen that. And the opposite, they've come forward and defended President Trump, because Senator Lee, I also talked with Representative Chris Stewart, they view this as a policy situation. They say, yeah, we don't agree with the tweets, with the personal fights, but we agree with President Trump on policy. Therefore, we're sticking with him, because with him, we can get what we want done, you know, limited government, separation of powers.
Well, that's very interesting. But when you start seeing people drop out, like Jeff Flake, who has ties to Utah, I mean, I think he's got at least one child going to BYU, right?
He spends him eating at Hires, so that's the tie. I mean,
okay, he's close to
he's
Utah.
Yeah,
absolutely right. But when you see people like him going out, or Bob Corker starting to have exchanges with the president that are negative, and even John McCain. What are the separations of these groups? Do we have old guard, new, the conservative guard, and then the disgruntled? Is that what's happening right now? Is there really a power problem right here for the heart and soul of the Republican Party?
It's hard to talk about public policy when you're focusing on Twitter. It really is. Yeah. And if I were to say, what's the only reason why I'm upset that Donald Trump tweets a lot, it's that we lose the focus on public policy debates, because you can't have a public policy debate in 140 characters. You just can't. I don't mind him tweeting. I think it's the age we live in to reach out and to get your point across, but let's use it sparingly and focus on the public policy debate. Republicans are going to miss a grand opportunity here if they walk away from their majorities because they have not taken on their core brand, their core product.
I do think the Jeff Flake situation shines a light on Bannon and those that he's targeting, the establishment for sure. I think this is a win for Bannon because it shows how powerful the Trump machine is, that if you're not on board, get out of the way or we'll push you out of the way.
Which is essentially what he said, right?
Yeah.
You can get on board or you can get out.
Yeah. And largely, I think part of our problem is looking back over 8 years, Republicans have been the party of no, or they could do whatever they wanted because they knew it didn't have teeth with President Obama there. I think they've forgotten how to legislate, how to come together and make new bills and make things that will pass. I think they're just so used to pushing back that they're not as organized as they used to be, and they don't have that heart and soul you said.
Interesting.
It's not as fun to govern.
No.
It's much more fun to throw arrows and darts and stones. It's much easier to do that. You don't have to have a cohesive message. It's much more difficult to govern.
Can I ask one more question about this issue? When President Trump was elected, people started asking the question, who will rise in the Democratic Party to save it? And so who's the next person to bring us back? We're not even having that conversation anymore, right? We're talking about who's going to rise in the Republican Party.
I can't even think of who I would say. No.
And that's kind of the power of Trump, is that with all the tweets, that all the attention is there and on the Republican Party.
The only person you can say is Elizabeth Warren. I wouldn't count out Terry McAuliffe in Virginia. It's a swing state. He's fairly popular. He's kind of crafted in the Bill Clinton, machine, and so I would say he would be another one as well.
Okay. Very good. Let's talk about another national issue impacting all of us. We have some of the greatest national parks in the whole country here in the
Mighty Five.
The Mighty Five, right? We love them. We appreciate them. And this week, a proposal comes out to raise the entrance fee, $70 per car to get into these places.
That can add up.
That can.
It can add up. The Hatch family going a couple times, right, Heidi?
Well, when I look at it, there's two different ways, because I think about how much money we spend when we go to Disneyland per person, and we'll shell out all of that money. Yeah, it's a lot of money. So when you think about paying $70, that's nothing, and it would help because you go there. It is like being in Disneyland. You're waiting in a little line to climb up the mountain, but at the same time, when I think back to my childhood family vacations, they mostly were national parks and camping because that's what we could afford. There wasn't a lot of extra money when you're sewing your own clothes and mixing your own milk at home. So do we really want to take away the opportunity for families who can't afford to go there, and those are their family vacations, and then keep them out? I don't know that's what we want. It's a hard one.
It's problematic because the parks do need help here in Utah. They're overcrowded. They've delayed all of this infrastructure improvement. So if you talk with Arches or Zion, they say we need money now, and they also they don't mind if raising the entrance fee keeps people away. They feel like over the summer it's a detriment to the experience to have so many people there.
The political reality is they're not getting any more money. If they want more money, they're going to have to raise the fee themselves. Universities in the state of Utah have witnessed this themselves. They find they can't get money from the state legislature, so what do? They raise tuition, and they can control that. This is the only thing the National Park Service can control, is raising the entrance fees. And it's sad to see. We're in a different day and age. It would be great if they were free and you could go there and you didn't have to wait in line. But it is the age we live in, and that is, in order to keep them up to standards and keep them nice to visit, people are going to have to pay for.
Well,
them.
what about the state's interest in, though? If what Heidi was saying was right there too, it becomes expensive and maybe as many people don't come. Is that going to have a negative impact on our own tourism economy here? It's going to keep people away, or probably not?
Hey, the Mighty Five campaign has worked. It's worked too well. And that's what you're seeing. You're seeing a lot of people coming to those national parks because of our international advertising campaign of the Mighty Five. So we probably do have some, we probably should pay into that, but the state legislature is not going to pay into the national parks. We kept them open when they shut down, but that's not going to be the norm.
Okay.
And with an international tourist coming all the way to the United States to visit our park, $70 isn't going to keep them out of the
them
park.
once you come from Europe and Asia.
Okay.
Maybe there should be a USA discount.
Yeah. Or local
That
discount.
could be.
Okay, it all started right here. How does this impact Utahns' views on public lands generally? In the poll we just put out in the last couple minutes we have here, 51% of Utahns felt like the Bears Ears designation was too large. All right, it gets into this broader discussion about how the feds control our public lands. Why are we so divided on this one?
I don't think we're terribly educated, honestly. I think when you go and you listen to a lot of people talk about it, people on the right say keep our lands open, on the left they want the opposite. But I don't know that a lot of people, if you were to really talk to them about the land, what's being closed off, what's being open, that they know. And so I think it's a tough issue.
So even ask the question, maybe they wouldn't understand what that means.
Yeah, it's tough to wrap your mind around it.
I think Heidi's onto something because the population centers here along the Wasatch Front, Grand Staircase, Bears Ears, in a southern part of the state, and so people don't understand what's going on that local level. If you talk to someone in those rural counties, they're going to have an opinion because they have seen how it's impacted their family. But up here in the Wasatch Front, I think it really is a political debate rather than something personal.
Last comment.
It started out to protect antiquities. That's what it started out. Congressman from Ohio wanted to protect the pot stealers from the Indian sites there. That's how it started. It should be the smallest footprint it can be.
Excellent. Thank you very much for your comments on this. Very insightful. That's it for tonight's show. The conversation continues online at kued.org/Hinckley Report. We'll see you next week. Thank you and good night.